is full with rotten paper. No one ever saw it clearer. Judging the content, never miss a moment. All impressive information we discuss with every nation.
We can now look at how do you actually find something in the archive, and in practice, what does the archive actually contain? So we can see here a list of the various folders that represent the different topics that the archive covers. So we have quite a number around aircraft itself, also general items, historic documents, natural flight, railways, ships, uniforms, vehicles, and weapons. So pretty much most of the things that people would actually identify with. If we look at one particular area, so look at Central Powers aircraft of 1900 to 1920, we see we've got something like 100 different manufacturers' folders, each of these containing all the models that were manufactured by those particular aircraft companies. Now, in some cases there are gaps simply because I don't have any information, or it's very difficult to obtain information, but we have what we have and we deal with it as we can. So if we're going to look at the Fokker aircraft, we can see here we've got an investigation folder, which is an area that I put files in that I haven't yet ascertained as to where they belong in the archive. Some additional items, Anthony Fokker's photographs. And most people would have seen this particular photograph. It's a pretty well-known photo. But what people might not know, here's a Fokker photograph from when he was much younger. So again, while this item has very clearly identified as a copyright, because the archive earns no money, we don't have any issues with displaying or sharing these particular pieces of information. It's only if you try to make money out of them, you'll get into trouble, not me. So as we go down through, we have various articles, books that we're developing. Company documents is an interesting area because with things like adverts, correspondence, drawings, etc. Even Fokker's own money. So he issued these to his workers. So we got a 1, 5 and 50 pfennig. And they had to be spent in the Fokker shop, which was a practice that was carried out quite a lot during that time, and in the UK continued up until the Victorian period. So not something new really. If you also look at other documents, we can see things like, let's look at correspondence. So you might remember from the naming convention article that here we have examples of, so 1910 0730, a letter handwritten regarding driver training in Brigham, and the reference 150 relates to another source of data which is held in the source information, and again quality information afterwards. So if we look at the letter, here it is in all its glory. I can't read it because it's in German, but no doubt German readers would have no difficulty reading it. So it gives you an idea, and there's in excess of 370 items in this particular folder alone. So anything that we could come across that had some information that Fokker sent or received, there's a lot in here, and I suspect there's a lot more yet to be discovered because we haven't touched on the Fokker archives in the Netherlands, Fokker's particular boxes of data, which is a job for another day. So we have lots of different things in here. We can have postcards. So this is where someone would send a postcard. So this, 9/5 of 1912. And on the back of the card was sent to Mr. Reinhold and his address in Holland. So when we have information like that, we store it. It's valuable to somebody, and it'll be interesting to see whether anybody can actually make use of any of the data that we have. So if we look down through here, we can see that we've got all the different models that Fokker designed, produced, and in some cases went into production. Not all aircraft went into production. Fokker went through 60 different models of aircraft during his time in World War I, which in itself is quite an achievement. The aircraft that I particularly have an interest in is the Fokker V1, mainly because it contains information that I've done a lot of research on. So back in 2009, I wrote a series of articles for World War I Aero on the Fokker V1, and wrote a subsequent number of additional articles to actually improve what our understanding was at that particular time. So while I was doing that, other people also creating documents. So here we have a document that's from an Insignia magazine, which actually specialises in talking about particular aircraft, but also decals for certain aircraft. So here we have a drawing, a load of text that describes what the aircraft was all about, and some references to things. Now, one of the interesting things, this is something that a lot of people have come to believe because of a certain book that was published. Reinhold Platz did not design any aircraft at all. He was not qualified, nor did he have the skills to do so. He was, however, a master welder, and that's very different. So when people say, oh, Platz designed the Fokker aircraft, that's a completely false statement. He did not do it at all. Just something that's a bit of a bug with us in the museum, because we know there's enough evidence to prove the fact that he didn't do it at all. Enough of that. So if we then look at the photographs, what we have here is a whole range of different photographs. So I'll just pick the first one. Here we have a photograph showing a lower wing design for the V1. Obviously quite unique in that it's a composite wing. It's made of wood, plywood and aluminium, possibly some steel wires for stiffening, but quite interesting in the way it's been put together and very innovative for its time. You're going to remember this is during World War I. We really didn't have these kind of metal aircraft with this kind of design until much later, despite what Junkers did with his aircraft. Notice also that we have a very large table here with a number of attachment points on, which appears to be some sort of jig which Fokker would have used to help reproduce aircraft in a production type facility, so he could get the same shape, size, measurements and designs detailed without any issues at all. Alongside these photographs, I've written up some notes. Now you'll have to excuse the spelling because I was more interested in just getting the notes down, but equally so, it shows you the sort of things that I would look at in terms of interpreting the particular images and working out what was going on. So quite interesting to do this, and I've done this for nearly all the Fokker V1 photographs, but I also undertook a way of dealing with photographs by doing some sketch work. So if we look at this drawing of the aileron control mechanism, what we have here, here's the aileron spar, the pulleys for the cabling, here's the inner spar for the aileron. The rest is not attached at this point in time. And for that, we have a number of notes for it, just some general notes to sort of describe what's going on. And then I thought it would be good to just draw up some detailed images of what the actual photograph was representing. So we have the pulley structure, how the pulleys are canted, how the aileron and tubes are all arranged. So as much detail as I could find, I was putting it into drawing. So at some point, if a detailed set of engineering drawings were required for the V1, this sort of drawing and the photos would be very valuable in terms of designing that particular aircraft. So we have lots and lots of different photographs for Fokker, and this aircraft in particular, but it's not unusual. We've got lots of photographs for many other aircraft. If we look at one of the most popular aircraft of the time, the Fokker D7, we can see here we have a series of folders, each folder representing the serial production for that given time frame. So, for example, we've got here serials 227 to 526 of 18. In this folder we've got serials 527 to 926, but Albatross produced aircraft with the Albatross designation, internal designation of L34. The next one has another series, but OAW. So each of these represents a collection of information associated with that particular series of aircraft. There's also a whole range of unidentified aircraft, a series of documents, and a whole series of photographs, again with Albatross, Fokker, OAW, post-war reproductions. So there's a whole range of information here that people could investigate if they so choose to do so. Anyone looking for information on the D7 would have quite a lot of information here. One of the other things that we collect that is just as important is that we collect information that Ahim Ingalls is actually producing his aircraft. So we have things like his works, different articles, drawings. So we look at D7 drawings, fuselage. Takes a little while for this one to load, but you get the idea. So Fokker D7, fuselage. So engineering drawings that Ahim has produced that would allow anyone to produce an aircraft if they so choose to. But it's not just the fuselage, we've got undercarriage, wings and weapons and the motor arrangements. So the archive contains a great deal of information and really something that most people would really like to explore. But equally we could go into other areas. Ships, there's over 800 ships listed in this particular archive at the moment. Vehicles, over 1100 vehicles identified. Weapons, over 300. So while a lot of the folders have some gaps, there may be some information that is not there. The focus at the archive at the moment has predominantly been on the Fokker area, because that's the area that Ahim and I are working in. But the rest of the archive is open for people to explore, but also for people to contribute if they so desire. And we would enjoy seeing people contribute.